trillion. The number is so large that the human brain cannot genuinely process it. We hear it in news reports about government budgets and corporate valuations and national debts, and it washes over us the way very large numbers always do. Acknowledged, but not truly understood. So before we talk about what $1 trillion could do for the world, let us spend a moment making the number real. You would need to keep spending at that rate for another 700 years before you got there. 1 million seconds is 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. 1 trillion seconds is 32,000 years. The number is not just large, it is categorically, qualitatively, fundamentally different from the numbers we use in everyday life. And yet, several individual human beings on this planet are worth more than $1 trillion. Several countries spend more than $1 trillion every year. And the questions of what that money could do if directed differently are among the most important questions in modern economics. Today, we are going to answer those questions and acknowledge where the answers are more complicated than the simple arithmetic suggests. Because the most interesting thing about $1 trillion is not just what it could buy, it is what the evidence says about what actually works when large sums of money are directed at humanity's largest problems. Let us start with hunger. Approximately 733 million people on this planet go to bed hungry every night. The United Nations World Food Program, the organization that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020 and feeds more hungry people than any other institution on Earth, estimates that ending acute global hunger would cost approximately $40 billion per year. Not $1 trillion, $40 billion. That means $1 trillion could fund the complete elimination of acute global hunger for 25 years. Every hungry person on Earth fed, for a quarter century, from $1 trillion. The United States alone spends more than $800 billion every year on its military. The world's 10 wealthiest individuals are collectively worth more than $1 trillion, and Elon Musk has just become the first trillionaire. The arithmetic of global hunger is not a problem of insufficient resources. It is a problem of insufficient will. The clean water crisis tells a similar story. Approximately 2.2 billion people on Earth lack access to safely managed drinking water. The World Health Organization estimates that providing universal access to clean water and basic sanitation globally would cost between $100 and $150 billion per year. $1 trillion could fund clean water access for every human being on Earth for between 6 and 10 years. And the infrastructure built during that period would continue providing clean water long after the initial investment. Every child who currently dies from a waterborne disease, and approximately 1,000 children die from waterborne diseases every single day, would have access to the clean water that would have prevented that death for $1 trillion. Before we continue, take a second to like or subscribe to Kraftwise. It is a simple action from you, but it helps us tremendously. Now let us talk about education. Approximately 244 million children around the world are currently out of school. UNESCO estimates that achieving universal quality primary and secondary education globally by 2030 would require an additional $39 billion per year above what is currently being spent. $1 trillion could fund that gap for more than 25 years, putting every child on Earth in a quality school, giving every child the literacy and numeracy foundation that determines whether they can participate in the modern economy. The return on investment from education is among the highest of any development intervention measured. Every additional year of schooling increases an individual's earnings by approximately 10% on average, and the economic returns to societies from educated populations compound across generations. $1 trillion directed at global education is not charity. It is the highest returning investment in human capital ever assembled. The global health picture is where the arithmetic becomes most striking. Malaria kills approximately 600,000 people every year, almost entirely in sub-Saharan Africa, almost entirely children under 5. The cost of eliminating malaria globally through bed nets, indoor spraying, treatment programs, and vaccine distribution is estimated at between $6 and $10 billion per year. $1 trillion could fund the complete elimination of malaria for a century. A disease that has killed more human beings than any other in history could be permanently ended for the rough equivalent of what a handful of technology companies spend on stock buybacks in a single year. Tuberculosis, still one of the world's leading infectious disease killers, could be eliminated for a similar investment. HIV/AIDS programs that have already dramatically reduced transmission rates in many countries could be scaled globally for a fraction of $1 trillion. The diseases that kill the most people in the poorest countries are almost uniformly diseases that are either entirely preventable or entirely treatable. And the funding gaps that allow them to continue killing are, relative to $1 trillion, almost embarrassingly small. Climate change presents a different category of challenge, one where $1 trillion is genuinely large, but also genuinely insufficient on its own. The International Energy Agency estimates that transitioning the global energy system away from fossil fuels and toward renewable energy would require approximately $4 trillion per year for the next 3 decades. $1 trillion is a significant contribution to that transition, but not a solution to it. What $1 trillion could do in the climate space, invested strategically, is accelerate the deployment of renewable energy in the developing world, fund climate adaptation programs for the communities most vulnerable to rising seas and changing weather patterns, protect critical forest ecosystems that currently act as carbon sinks, and fund the research and development that drives the cost of clean energy technology lower for every subsequent year. The returns on that trillion would be measured not just in reduced emissions, but in avoided costs, because the economic damage from unchecked climate change, estimated by economists at tens of trillions of dollars over the century, dwarfs any conceivable upfront investment in prevention. Let us talk about something closer to individual human experience: mental health. The World Health Organization estimates that depression and anxiety cost the global economy approximately $1 trillion per year in lost productivity alone, not including healthcare costs, not including the human suffering that has no economic measure. The global treatment gap for mental health, the proportion of people with mental health conditions who receive no treatment, is approximately 75% in low and middle income countries. Scaling up evidence-based mental health treatment globally would cost approximately $80 to $100 billion over the next decade, according to WHO estimates. $1 trillion could fund comprehensive global mental health treatment for a decade while having hundreds of billions of dollars remaining. The return would be measured in reduced suffering, increased productivity, reduced substance abuse, and stronger family and community structures, all of which have their own downstream economic and social benefits that compound over time. Now, here is where the honest conversation gets more complicated, because the question of what $1 trillion could do for the world is not purely an arithmetic exercise. Money directed at complex human problems does not always produce the outcomes the arithmetic suggests. Foreign aid has a mixed record. Some programs produce transformative outcomes: the eradication of smallpox, the near elimination of polio, the dramatic reduction in child mortality from preventable diseases over the past 30 years. Others have produced dependency, corruption, and institutional weakness in the countries they were intended to help. The evidence from development economics, accumulated over decades of rigorous research by economists like Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2019 for their work on poverty, consistently shows that what matters is not just how much money is spent, but how it is spent, who controls it, what accountability mechanisms exist, and whether programs are designed around evidence of what actually works. Cash transfers, giving money directly to poor people with no conditions attached, have produced some of the strongest and most consistent development outcomes in the research literature. Programs in Kenya, Mexico, Brazil, and dozens of other countries have shown that poor people given direct access to cash make remarkably sensible decisions about how to spend it: on food, on children's education, on small business investment, on healthcare. The paternalistic assumption that poor people cannot be trusted to spend money wisely is consistently contradicted by the evidence. $1 trillion directed through well-designed direct cash transfer programs could lift hundreds of millions of people out of extreme poverty, not temporarily, but permanently, by giving families the capital they need to escape the poverty traps that keep generations locked in deprivation. Infrastructure tells another important part of the story. The World Bank estimates that developing countries face an infrastructure gap of approximately $1.5 trillion per year. Roads, bridges, ports, electricity grids, internet connectivity, the physical foundations that determine whether an economy can function and grow. Infrastructure investment has among the highest economic multipliers of any government spending. Every dollar invested in infrastructure generates between $1.5 and $2 of economic output. $1 trillion in targeted infrastructure investment in the world's poorest countries would not just build roads and power grids. It would unlock economic activity, reduce the cost of doing business, increase agricultural productivity, connect remote communities to markets, and create the conditions for sustained economic growth that continues long after the initial investment. There is a version of this conversation that treats $1 trillion as a magic solution, as though the right amount of money would simply dissolve the world's problems. That version is naive. The problems of global poverty, disease, hunger, and environmental destruction are embedded in political systems, governance structures, cultural institutions, and power relationships that money alone cannot rearrange. Corrupt governments divert aid. Weak institutions cannot implement programs at scale. Communities that have not been consulted about solutions designed for them often reject or underuse those solutions. The history of development is full of well-funded programs that failed because they were designed without understanding the human and institutional context they were entering. But there is also a version of this conversation that uses complexity as an excuse for inaction, that treats the imperfection of solutions as a reason to avoid spending at all. That version is equally wrong. The evidence is clear that targeted, well-designed, accountable spending on specific interventions, vaccine distribution, malaria prevention, direct cash transfers, clean water infrastructure, primary education, produces outcomes that are real, measurable, and significant. The children who did not die from malaria because a bed net cost $4 are as real as the philosophical objections to foreign aid. The women in Kenya who started businesses with direct cash transfers are as real as the economists who debate whether aid creates dependency. $1 trillion is not enough to fix everything, but it is enough to fix some things completely, to end acute hunger, to eliminate specific diseases, to put every child in a school while making meaningful progress on others. The more important question it raises is not whether $1 trillion could change the world. The evidence is overwhelming that it could. The more important question is why. In a world where $1 trillion is the personal net worth of several individuals and the annual budget of several corporations, the interventions that could save millions of lives every year remain chronically underfunded by margins that are, relative to the wealth that exists in the world, almost incomprehensibly small. The gap between what we could do and what we are doing is not a gap of resources. It is a gap of priorities. And understanding that gap, understanding the actual scale of what is possible and what it would cost, is the beginning of having an honest conversation about what the world's wealth is for. Let us know in the comments what you would do if you had $1 trillion.